When I first moved to Tampa for college a little over a decade ago, the only things I knew were Busch Gardens and USF. As far as anything food related, my expertise didn't go beyond the dining halls at school and the chain restaurants my friends and I would go to on a Friday night when we were all bored. In the decade I've lived here, I've grown slightly obsessed with Tampa's local food scene. Every neighborhood in town offers a different culinary vibe inspired by various cultures and the people who live there. Honestly, I don't think there is a food scene anywhere else like Tampa, and there definitely isn't anywhere else offering the vibes like Seminole Heights. It all began in 1911 when T. Roy Young bought and developed 40 acres into Tampa's first suburb located a few miles north of downtown. Young's property was bordered by Hillsborough, Central, Wilder, and Florida avenues. The bungalow-style home started at $5,000. Over the years, the area has gone through several changes that adds to its appeal. Fun fact, the neighborhood actually got its name from being at a higher elevation than downtown Tampa.
The Seminole Heights neighborhood was established in 1911. It was basically one of the first neighborhoods in the city of Tampa. I think Tampa Heights was the first neighborhood, but Seminole Heights came up shortly after. It was called Seminole Heights because the land was higher than downtown, so it was the height that went down.
For the past 5 years, I've lived right next door to the Seminole Heights neighborhood. My interest in this part of town can be considered a slow-growing obsession, and I think locals can definitely understand. The cute bungalows tell a story of Tampa's yesteryear. Whenever I drive around the neighborhood, I'm awed at the tree-lined and sometimes cobbled streets and marvel at the houses. I imagine what the streets looked and sounded like 100 years ago when it was quiet and before the hustle and bustle of a growing city. If you scroll through the Instagram pages of restaurants, you notice the food is fun, adventurous, and risky. The hipster vibe of Seminole Heights gives the food an edginess not really seen elsewhere in other Tampa neighborhoods. In what area of the city can you walk down the street and choose between a burger, Asian, and old Florida classics your grandparents ate? The close proximity between options allows the locals the chance to walk to wherever their heart and stomach desires. So what sets Seminole Heights apart from the rest of the city? Well, it's a lot of things. Just to name a few, it's diversity, accessibility, and inclusivity. The old bungalows and quiet streets are great for parents looking for a place where their children can grow up. You'll find a few residents who've lived in the neighborhood for generations. Everyone who lives in Seminole Heights loves the area because it's accepting to anyone regardless of their differences.
So I would say that we have a very diverse and inclusive neighborhood. So we have neighbors who have been around and their parents and grandparents lived here. We have neighbors who have moved from out of state and are brand new to the area, but we're all unified in the fact that we want to advocate for and champion our community. Seminole Heights is a great area to live in, and it's a really great opportunity to share with others what we love about the area. So while we're diverse, we're very inclusive of all people, so regardless of race or gender or sexual identity or sexual orientation, none of that matters to us. I think we all come together with really cool events in the neighborhood, whether it be Halloween events or Christmas concerts or the Heights Unites Music and Arts Festival, and we all come around and celebrate our community, and that's what's really important for us and unifying.
Honestly, it's like all the residents in Seminole Heights are one big happy family. They support the restaurants and the owners in any way they can. Furo Alvarez of Rooster in the Till says the people are super protective of the neighborhood. Who wouldn't want to know that kind of energy surrounds their new neighborhood eatery?
The neighborhood is super united. They look out for one another. They're very protective of Seminole Heights, sometimes to a fault. Very close-knit and very acceptant of new things and welcoming of independent businesses, and very supportive. It's almost like that small town, old school mentality to a certain extent.
Tampa Bay Times food critic Laura Riley says she began to notice Seminole Heights becoming a hotspot back in 2008 with the opening of the restaurant Ella's Americana Folk Art Cafe.
I think that when Ella's Americana Folk Art Cafe opened, It seemed like an outlier, something different, something new, something that had never really been in Seminole Heights before. And I think that was 2008 or 2009. And I saw it as kind of an isolated thing, and shortly thereafter the refinery opened, and shortly thereafter Rooster and the Till opened, and it started to become a real hotbed of, exciting kind of independent owner-operator restaurants.
Ella's Americana Folk Art Cafe owner Melissa Deming says she opened the Seminole Heights landmark because she noticed there wasn't much of anything to do or anywhere to go in the neighborhood.
Well, I moved here 18 years ago, and I loved the neighborhood. I loved all the old residential bungalows. Fell in love with the neighborhood, but hated the fact that there was nowhere to go in the neighborhood. Everyone was traveling south Tampa or Eagle or, anywhere to go, to go out at night. And so just decided I was going to open up in the neighborhood. We were one of the first to kind of get our doors open, and immediately the neighborhood was so supportive. People were lined out the door to get in just because there was nothing to do in the neighborhood. The neighborhood associations were really supportive and trying to get everything. It took a long time to get open in the neighborhood, and the reason a lot of places weren't opening is because it was so hard to go through all the city hoops to jump through to try and build. All of the city codes were set up for suburban sprawl and not urban development. So everything you went to do with the city became a giant task and a hurdle to jump on just getting your doors open. So since then, things have changed a little bit, and it's a lot easier, I think, to open.
Greg Baker, chef and co-owner of the refinery, opened in the neighborhood in 2010 because he and his partner felt like there wasn't anywhere else like Seminole Heights. Plus, the rent was inexpensive at the time.
There just wasn't a lot commercially going on, with the exception of a couple of places. If you wanted to go out to have food or a drink, you had to leave the neighborhood. We saw a place that we could fit. We came up with our business model long before we decided where we were going to put it. And we decided that one, there's no better neighborhood for what we were trying to do than Seminole Heights. After considering all the different places we could live, where we could open, looking at the pricing and whatnot, it's like, well, why are we going to go to someplace and better somebody else's neighborhood? That's just the same as going out, leaving the neighborhood to go out to dinner or go get a beer. So we decided that if we were going to do this, we might as well do it in our own backyard. Not only because of the prevailing attitudes, but also, rent was really affordable.
The attractiveness of Seminole Heights, and because it was up and coming, was all the more reason for Jessica Conlin, owner and president of the Jet City Espresso Shops, to open up her cafe. The revived old historic homes caught her eye and made her want to open up another location in Tampa. It didn't hurt that a few of her friends lived in the area as well.
It was a wonderful up-and-coming area. We had a lot of friends that lived up here and bought homes and redid them. It was just such a beautiful area, and we got really excited about something that was just so fresh and new in an old historic neighborhood that could be revived with a lot of TLC and care, and prices were really reasonable for such beautiful homes and areas. So we wanted to bring a local coffee shop up to Seminole Heights.
All it took for Veronica Danko, owner of the independent bar and cafe, was a suggestion from her friends who already lived in the neighborhood. After she'd been looking in other areas to see if they were a good fit, they told her Seminole Heights needed a place like hers. What are friends for, right?
I opened a craft beer bar in St. Pete in 2005. And I was looking for a Tampa location in around 2008, and I was looking in different neighborhoods. I had some friends that lived in Seminole Heights, and they suggested that was, my concept in St. Pete was something that was needed and wanted in Seminole Heights. There was a lot of craft beer brewers and people who were looking for that kind of product, and they kind of drove me to start looking in this neighborhood.
I doubt anyone ever thought Seminole Heights would become the food and drink hotspot it is currently. A few years ago, the neighborhood was just where people drove through to avoid horrible rush hour traffic and get home after a long day at work. There wasn't any real incentive to staying. It was just an area known for its old homes and independent spirit. In just a short amount of time, now there are numerous options for places to indulge. Beer breweries, pizza spots, breakfast, and brunch. All you have to do is walk out your front door.
Well, I think that if you look at emerging restaurant destinations in the cities all over the country, what you find is they are in neighborhoods that are gentrifying or that are moving from a state of, kind of being run down or a little bit poor to, a little more affluent, or kind of new young families willing to kind of fix up some places. And I think that a lot of times it's about cheap rent.
Locals from all over Tampa and tourists from beyond travel to Seminole Heights to sample some of the most exciting food combos. The independent spirit of the area allows for more creativity and adventure in the kitchen. It keeps you guessing what's next on the menu. Prices may increase because of growing popularity, but that doesn't change anything.
When I first moved to this area, people were not as adventuresome as eaters. We had less kind of ethnic diversity in terms of restaurants. There were whole categories of food that we didn't have at all. From Korean to Singaporean or those kinds of things. And we had very little Japanese food that wasn't sushi. And I think that we've really filled in the full range of cuisines. You definitely see a lot more kind of ambitious, independent, owner-operator, kind of chef-driven food. The consumers are ready to pay the money for that. I definitely think that the price point has crept up in Seminole Heights just in the past 4 or 5 years. You see the $15 cocktail is something that people will pay for now that, 5 years ago that was an impossibility in Seminole Heights. So, there's definitely, change, and it's moving a little upscale, but I would say that there's still a real independent spirit.
I think that Seminole Heights back then, and even still to this day, is a place where people, when they come to dine, they release all preconceived notions of safety dining or being catered to. They come here and they want to experience something new, something a little bit outside of their box. So we figured if we opened in Seminole Heights in that regard, it would give us a chance to really showcase the food and beverage program that we wanted to and not have to play it safe.
They're able to take this idea or this particular concept of a really cool restaurant or a bar or maybe like a pop-up restaurant, and then test it, and then figure out, get some, learn about the kinks, work out the things that they need to work out in order for them to thrive and be successful. Everybody here understands that in order for businesses and concepts to thrive, they have to support them. So they go leaps and bounds trying to make sure that they can tell friends about the concepts that are in Seminole Heights, and they can also tell other businesses to support or collaborate with businesses that exist.
I think a lot of people associate Seminole Heights with hip food, with trendy food. So I just think it's kind of almost a direct correlation now. You think Seminole Heights, you think food. If you're a foodie, you're going to try something on Seminole Heights.
I think it's interesting how the vibe continues to change and grow. The places that have been here for years and years have set the tone, and then some of the new places like us that have come along, I think, are hopefully only enhancing that. But I think it's really, Seminole Heights has really over the last few years begun to develop a really solid reputation for itself as being a great go-to spot for food and drink and atmosphere. And I'm just really honored to have the Sea House be a part of that.
It's great to be able to walk down the street and have an amazing meal, and now we have a lot more options as well. We didn't want to drive over to South Tampa all the time, I barely go there now, like barely, like if ever, because we have so much to offer here.
Well, it's kind of what I set out to make happen. It's one thing. We didn't really understand the scale of anything that was going to happen, but what my wife and I wanted to do was change the dining scene in Tampa. Choices were fairly limited as far as, well, you can go here and you can get your Cuban sandwich or any other pick a culture and whatnot, then you've got above that you've got chains, and above that you've got ultra fine dining places. Where's that gap in the middle from Applebee's to fine dining, you know? So that's where we went, and we didn't really think it was going to impact anything nationally, but everything is cyclical. So there's going to be a new hot neighborhood after a while. Things are happening down in Tampa Heights. West Tampa is starting to get redeveloped. Sorry, but it's going to happen everywhere, and Soho isn't as much of a destination for anybody who's not a college student anymore as it used to be. I'll just kind of, all things rise, things fade. It's just the nature of things.
In October 2017, the neighborhood was shaken up by a series of 4 murders occurring over the course of a month, ending just a few days before Thanksgiving. Citizens in the neighborhood banded together to help find the person who left many awake at night wondering when the next murder was going to happen. Because I lived close by, I was a little afraid as well, because no one knew who the serial killer was. Unfortunately for the restaurants and other businesses, sales dwindled a bit because people weren't going out at night as much, and the crowds that once populated the neighborhoods decreased. Locals stayed home more and kept any and all lights on that they could. The residents also banded together to form the Light the Heights initiative to help police find the killer. Volunteers in the Have Your Neighbors Back squad made sure the streets were safe by canvassing different areas. The reputation was tainted for a bit due to media portrayal and fears, but once the killer was arrested and revealed, some businesses were able to bounce back and reestablish who they were. Others weren't so lucky.
Well, it had a dramatic effect on the restaurants. I think it had been a year where there had been some rumblings about kind of restaurant recession, or is Tampa overbuilt a little bit in terms of restaurants? And I think the killings had the effect of keeping away people from other parts of Tampa who might have people from New Tampa or South Tampa, Hyde Park area, who might sometimes go to Seminole Heights specifically to eat dinner. I think there were a couple months there that people didn't go. So I think that residents patronized the local businesses, but people, either tourists or people from other parts of Tampa, didn't. I think that people have very short attention spans. So I think that there was a period of time, and the fact that it went national, that there were a serial killer on the loose in Seminole Heights in Tampa, Florida, it certainly didn't help the neighborhood, but I would say that, there are 7 or 8 new businesses on the horizon for Seminole Heights, so clearly it didn't hurt things too much.
It affected us actually significantly because we were pretty brand new. We were just trying to, establish ourselves and trying to feel like what's working, what's not working, but it wasn't, we couldn't get a good feel of it because it wasn't, people weren't showing up, and people were afraid to go out, and a lot of our businesses for dinner, Yeah, it was a 50% reduction in our revenue. Yeah, it was significant at one point. It was pretty significant. Yeah.
I had given my business till March to recover, and it didn't, and so now I am in May, 2 months after that, and I did list it on the market. We've just still been so slow. It just doesn't seem to be doing what it should be doing. By this time, last year we were doing much better than this year. And so, at least since there's just so much still happening up here and so many new places that I think with new people moving in, not having been tarnished by that, are just gonna frequent and go out and start supporting places again more than the people that were here during that. And I have my other location in Hyde Park, and I gave this a really solid go.
For us, it was it wasn't necessarily the daytime or the weekend, the week traffic. It was the weekend traffic, which we thought a lot of people visit Seminole Heights on the weekends as a thing to do. People that don't live in the neighborhood are coming in. Now they didn't come in anymore. So for us, it was a huge financial hit, anywhere between 30 to 40% per per week in revenue. We saw a decline, but we held some good fundraisers and things like that to try to increase the rewards and tried to make it as safe as possible. We added extra lights around the entire property during that time, and just tried to make it as safe as possible.
It was not as bad as the other restaurants, I think, in Seminole Heights. And our hours, we close at 6, so it really didn't affect us as well, you know, as much as the restaurants that are open 11 o'clock at night or 9 o'clock at night, because it was dark then and we're already closed. So a lot of businesses were affected because people didn't want to go out. People were afraid. No one wanted to walk around. I mean, there are nights my husband and I would walk to Ella's and walk home. People weren't doing that when this guy was out and about.
It was drastic, for sure. It definitely kind of shut the neighborhood down. Actually, it was the neighborhood that kept us alive during that time. I mean, people stopped driving to the neighborhood. Anyone that lived outside of the neighborhood, just stopped coming. And, you know, if it weren't for the support of the neighbors, you know, coming out, people were going out all week long just to try and make sure they were supporting and make sure the businesses that everyone had worked so hard, you know, building the community, we weren't going to let that, you know, bring us down. But we definitely took a nosedive on business for that 51 days. So it couldn't have turned out better, though.
Seminole Heights is going through a bit of a change currently. As the neighborhood becomes more popular, that means a different crowd is settling in. A couple new apartment buildings along Florida Avenue bring younger residents, but Seminole Heights still maintains its historical integrity and independent spirit.
I think we're going to continue to see growth. I think that one thing that's really anchored Seminole Heights as a restaurant destination is all of the craft beer culture. You know, I think a lot of cities around the country that's been the case, where there's a real you know, a growth in the craft beer segment, and then that yields, you know, microbreweries and brew pubs and kind of ancillary businesses and just restaurants to support the craft beer scene. So I think that, you know, the next 5 years, I anticipate it will do really well, especially because I think we're seeing growth from downtown into Tampa Heights and, you know, up through Seminole Heights. So I think that just geographically it's filled in a lot.
I mean, I think like all things in the future, it's hard to predict, but I think as you continue to have an influx of new residents you can probably very reasonably anticipate a younger crowd in the mid-20s to mid-30s and young families. I think the offerings that are here will continue to thrive, and I think that we'll continue to see new ones come along, and the ones that have been here will, you know, whether they add to their menus or they add additional space or whatever it is. I mean, those are the things that we can't predict. But I think what's going on now is really exciting. And if I had a crystal ball, I would certainly share with you what that looks like. But I think that it's nothing but positive on the horizon for the area.
I would like to see us surpass Hyde Park. I mean, we're already an area where people are like, gotta go to Seminole Heights. And I mean, my brother is a Marine, and he currently lives in North Carolina. And when we got here, he was like, this was not how it was when I was growing up. I would love this area to be the new City Walk. I would love this area to be the new Hyde Park. So first, we gotta get sidewalks and crosswalks so people stop getting hit by cars. But that's all come back to the city of Tampa, and we're working on that.
I think it's getting oversaturated. The only way it can survive is if we continue to pull from other neighborhoods. That means pulling from South Tampa, pulling from North Tampa, New Tampa. But we're not an entertainment district like Soho or like Ybor. So nobody has a crystal ball, but hopefully it maintains, it levels out, and you know. But I have a feeling that more and more people are, you know, everything is a copycat industry, so everybody's going to see it and they're going to keep adding on to it and going, oh, look what they're doing, we can do that. And hopefully it slows down.
It's been kind of a situation where, you know, you've had different levels of people coming in, and now it's kind of a renaissance of Seminole Heights. You've got all kinds. You got your hippies and your hipsters, your alternative lifestyles. And now you've got kind of like the business groups. The density is getting bigger. I mean, we've got a couple apartments going up, and I think that you're going to see probably little pockets of smaller complexes going up. So I think we're a different mindset in this area than South Tampa or Ybor. definitely Carrollwood and Wesley Chapel and all that. But I see it getting better. Because what you're doing is you get a lot of these houses are now being torn down and built. So you got that coming in. You got the Heights coming up, Ybor Heights coming up. You've got, I feel that the tower over here, where the park over here and where the old Kmart was and the new Wawa's at, that's the highest point in the city. You can see downtown from there. So I feel that's going to be developed. I'd love to put concerts at the dog track over there and make it like a Janice Landon. I think that's got enormous potential in that area. So that's all going to bleed right back into Seminole Heights. So I think we're going to capture from this side, and I think we're going to capture from that side. I think we're going to capture the north, I think we're going to capture the south, and they're going to come in and they're going to feed us, feed the neighborhood.
No matter who moves in, the vibe of the neighborhood and its food isn't ever going to change. The future of Seminole Heights is extremely bright and happening right before our eyes. Plans for new restaurants pop up consistently, so what's next for the food and drink scene of this old but ever-evolving neighborhood?